Okay, do you think if somebody cashes out interests as desires that somebody who's severely mentally disabled or like can have like a stake in their well-being or something?
Yeah, I think some notions of interest exclude those kind of people. Yeah.
Okay, his specific definition, like say a stake in your own well-being, do you think that would not include infants or like really mentally disabled people?
Well, he's not using the standard notion of that. He's using like some other notion where, as long as you're sentient, you have a stake in your well-being, and you don't
I,
need any sort of complex
I wouldn't
psychology.
even I wouldn't even grant that. I don't see how that
I
follows.
know that's another issue. Is that it's too broad, like I said previously.
Okay, do you think trees can be harmed? Like, do you think if I frustrate something's biological interest that it was harm? Because I think I have that intuition. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, yeah. I take a multiple realizability thesis about harm. So I think things can be harmful in multiple different ways, including trees.
Mm. Okay, the reason that you think abortion is wrong is because that's a set of natural facts. Like, you think that the fetus's biological functions is already on trajectory towards eudaimonia. Is that what you mean by eudaimonic satisfaction?
We're talking about Kay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Wait, sorry, repeat it again.
Yeah, so the reason that you think abortion is not morally permissible, I mean, firstly, I think it's going to turn on your theory of personal identity. And then also because the abortion is going to upset some sort of natural facts about the world. Like, I know one of them is eudaimonic satisfaction. Would you take it that the fetus just having some sort of biological functions that's conducive to its well being would count as it flourishing? And so by getting
Okay,
people
so
that,
okay, so the first thing is that when I say that some action is wrong, that's gonna turn on both my like the sort of semantic thesis and also the ontological thesis, right? So firstly, the semantic thesis, I think that the truth makers for those normative sentences, like I think it is wrong that, for example, right? I think those things are gonna be determined by facts that don't have a relation to the agent's psychology.
yeah,
Firstly,
you're not a subjectivist. Yeah, I agree.
right,
They're
and then
going
the
to be
second,
natural
and
facts
then
found in
this,
the world.
right, and then the second thing is that I think those terms also have an extension, right, in terms of their, I guess you could say, semantical structure, and the term wrong, its extension is such that it includes a certain cluster of natural facts, right? And those natural facts are either going to be satisfied by some given state of affairs, or those facts are going to be frustrated by some given state of affairs. And those facts have a synthetic reduction relation to the moral facts, right? And so when I say that some action is wrong, what I mean there is that the sort of natural facts that plausibly fall under its extension are those types of actions that are morally wrong. And so the abortion is one of those facts that plausibly falls under the extension, such that it doesn't include those homeostatic property clusters in a way that exemplifies the property of moral goodness.
Yeah, one of the things in the cluster is going to be eudaimonic satisfaction, right? So I'm asking you, do you think that the certain biological functions the fetus already has, like you could catch them out as biological interest, I guess. Would you say that those are conducive to its well-being? So by aborting it, that specific part of the set is being frustrated?
Well, I wouldn't use language like part of the set. Rather, what I would say is that I think so. You're right. You're correct to point out that one of the relevant, you could say, minor facts, you could say, like you could call them minor, major, and severe facts or something like that.
Mhm.
But the point is that I think one of those little facts there is that they're growing and developing inside of utero. I think those facts are conducive to its well-being, if that's what you're asking me. But I think the reason why the abortion is wrong is not because you're stopping a biological process per se, right? I think rather the reason why it's wrong is because the fetus itself, right, or the zygote, it has a certain set of what's called de re properties that are attributed to it, right? Now, if you don't, I don't know how familiar you are with the de re and the dicto distinction in metaphysics. Are you familiar with it?
No, I've heard you talk about it before, though.
Yeah, so when I say some when I say something is a de re necessity, right? For example, what I mean to say there is that that type of fact is, or rather, the modal operator of necessity is attributed to the item, irrespective of our sort of
Attitude
linguistic intentions about them,
the
right? Like
disposition.
it would still be the case that that object bears that property, even if no humans were to exist to observe it, for example. Okay. And you can sort of infer what the dicto means from there. Now, the point is that there are certain de re properties about the fetus that it bears, right? And there's also a type of relation that these de re properties bear to something called subjunctive conditional sentences, but we don't have to get into that. Point is that the actual reason why the abortion is wrong is because it prevents the actualization of those dispositional tendencies that the fetus has.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It has some sort of disposition towards being better off already, regardless of how you feel about the subject.
Yeah, yeah, like it's actually just like, and when they grow up to like, there's also certain things that there's also certain experiences that they have to go through, and certain activities that they have to engage in order to fulfill their nature. And so the sort of actions that are contrary to that, right, are the type of actions that are wrong, for example.
Is this is like your harm theoretic, right? Like the functionalist satisfaction view. It's because you said it's
No,
multiple.
so
Yeah.
my harm view is more specific. It captures a narrower amount of cases, you could say. But when I say I'm a functionalist satisfactionist about harm, that's just to say that the some subject is harmed just in case the event or the action frustrates or contravening to functionally grounded conditions for something's flourishing. Okay, so the conditions for something's flourishing are grounded in their function as a living entity, right? Like all living entities perform functions, right?
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. Like human beings perform a certain type of function, trees perform a certain type of function, and so on and so forth, right? So the point is that the sort of there's facts about the fact that you function in the ways that you do, right? And those facts are going to be conducive to what it means for you as that type of being to flourish. And the same is true for other types of beings, right? Like for example, for a tree, the facts that are good for its flourishing is that it gets the proper amount of nutrients and proper amount of water, and you have to put it under the sunlight and like whatever, right? All those facts. For a human, right, we're a little bit different because humans have these like higher order like capabilities, right? Like we can think in very complex manners, we can reason, right? We can
Rational.
abstract, we can deliberate. So the facts that are going to be conducive to our functions, right, those sort of higher order functions, is going to be a little bit unique, right? We actually have an ability to achieve something that others don't, which is that we can actually achieve happiness, right? And there's going to be certain facts about the way that you function that's going to help you get on path to achieve that thing, basically. And so when people do things that are against that, right, then they're probably either doing something wrong to you or they're harming you.
Yeah, you're saying there are stance independent things that are going to count in favor of you flourishing or being better off. That's
Yeah.
that's not preferential or whatever. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's like, yeah, that's sort of a synopsis of my view.
Wait, okay, so can you just encapsulate the? Because are you saying the natural facts are on a hierarchy within the set?
I probably wouldn't use that sort of language like they are hierarchically structured. Maybe what I want to say is that there's a type of there's what's called a homeostatic mechanism that's maintaining those natural facts. I don't know if they're hierarchically structured though.
Okay, in abortion specifically, which natural facts are being upset the most or counting in favor the most to the abortion being morally
I
impermissible?
don't know if one is being upset the most. What I would could just give you the ones that are being, frustrated. Like you could say something like the fact that it's causing harm to the fetus, in the functional satisfaction sense,
Uh-huh.
or the fact that the abortion fails to instantiate like eudaimonic satisfaction, right?
Uh-huh.
As like one of the constituent members of facts about goodness. Another one is that it fails to optimally realize like virtue manifestation, like virtue properties about the case, and then also that the abortion is contravening to species typical flourishing, right? That's like maybe an example of some of the things that an abortion does that goes against things that we want to say is good.
Okay. Okay. I want to kind of clarify this concept of like eudaimonia or flourishing. It kind of sounds mystical, but the way I interpret it is just like being happy. That's how I would like describe flourishing or eudaimonia. Do you have some sort of different notion of the term?
Well, thing is like whenever people say mystical, like that term is like it's extraordinarily vague. There's not really any, and usually when I ask people to sort of explain what they mean by that, it just kind of collapses into something like I don't really understand what the view is saying. But I don't think that those two things are, you could say, semantically identical to each other, right? So I don't think there's anything mystical about the concept of eudaimonia. But when I say eudaimonia, more specifically, what I'm talking about, when I say happiness, you can think about it like the sort of it's there's a comprehensive set of facts, right? The total amount of facts from the moment you begin to exist and the moment you fail to exist, right, or you cease to exist, rather. There's like a total amount of facts that are, sort of going to be conducive to whether or not you achieve happiness or not, right? And so you can think about flourishing as that total set of facts, all of the comprehensive facts about your well-being.
Biological, psychological, psychosocial.
Yeah, like all of those things combined is the total set of facts, you know, about flourishing or about eudaimonia.
Okay, it's not just indexed towards some sort of mental states like being happy. It's all
No,
encompassing.
although oftentimes people's psychologies tend to be in alignment with these things, it's not always the case that they are. And even in times when they're not, it's still the case that those things are good for you.
Yeah, because their stance independently true, regardless of your attitudes towards them. Yeah, like you
Right.
might think, like somebody who wants to unalive themselves might think that that's the correct thing to do, but obviously it's
Right. Even
wrong.
though oftentimes people's psychology is not that they want to unalive themselves, right? There could be times when it is, but it's still true that it's bad for you to do that.
Okay. And what's your view on personal identity? Like, do you think
Um,
the fetus is a person from conception? I know, like Link thinks there's a, some sort of soul that's present, a rational soul.
yeah, so yeah, I don't know. Like I used to run like a pretty heavy, I don't want to say heavy. I used to run like a sort of hylomorphic reading. Um, but not, you could sort of, I don't know what you would class me as. Maybe you might class me as like some technical version of an animalist, but I don't really know. But usually I can just sort of give you my notion of person, though. When I say person, usually what I'm talking about there is like, it's an individual suppositum, right? So in other words, it's just going to be an individual instance of rational nature.
They're just talking about composite object, and then the form is going to be like of a rational kind. But okay, you're not taking that the soul is some sort of immaterial thing, right? You just think that
No,
the
the soul is immaterial.
what's up?
Souls are immaterial. They're not material objects.
No, what I'm saying that's not true either. You're saying that the rational substratum is the essence of the animal, right? And the animal is obviously material.
Yeah, so there's like a material and immaterial aspect to human beings, both of them combined. The material stuff is what we see. We don't see the immaterial aspects about ourselves,
Okay,
but we
so
know that it's there.
can you expound on like the view of personal identity? Like, how does the subject persist through time? What is like the rational substratum or essence that you're talking about? Is it just like the ability for higher sort of deliberation, complex thoughts, stuff like that?
Mm, well, I don't know what you. Well, all right. When you say is it just stuff like that, then things that you listed. What is that question in relation to?
At, expounding on what the rational substratum or substance is or essence, however you want to cash it out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So When I say essence, I'm like a deflationist about essences, right? So I think that when I talk about essence, namely, I'm just talking about the defining properties of something. That's usually what I mean by essence, or the sort of, you could say, necessary properties of X.
Okay,
So to say that,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so to say that some object has an essence E is just to say that E is the defining properties of S. That's all I mean by essences.
Okay, so the defining property of humans is the rational nature or their rationality.
The defining property of humans is having a rational soul.
Okay, so you do think we have a rational soul. Um,
Yeah, that's what makes us human. At least that's what I think. I don't think it's your mind or something. You have something more than that.
okay, and that's going to be present at conception, right?
Somewhere around there. Implantation, conception, fertilization, I don't know, somewhere around there. I don't really know exactly what point it comes.
Okay, so my body is one thing and the soul is another thing. I remember I think I asked you like, would you say that the soul is the glue that holds the body together or something like that? You said you can
Well, I
feel.
don't know what. So when you say my body is one thing and the soul is another, it seems like you're not separated from your soul or something, right? Like you're actually, like your soul is integrated with your material existence, and your soul is what is responsible for your material existence, right? So it's
It's
not
the
like they're
form the
separated
matter
from each
takes.
other.
Yeah. Because we're composite objects of form and matter.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like it's fused with each other rather, not separated from each other.
What's this distinction you draw between the sperm and the egg and then the fetus? I don't know you're a Aristotelian, so maybe that the active passive potency stuff.
Well, for an Aristotelian, so you got to remember that for an Aristotelian, that definitions pick out essences. Okay, that's the first thing. So for an Aristotelian to say X is defined in such way is to say that X possesses the essence E, right? Now, what that means is that, so when you say so, but now let's look at just what a sperm is in isolation, right? You could say that a sperm is like, I don't know, a gamete or something, whatever. Like just take the standard definition, like a biological definition of what a
Yeah,
sperm is,
small gamete. Yeah.
and then look at the same thing for an organism, and they both have different defining properties. So they have different essences, right? That's what's going to distinguish them. Their essential properties.
Okay, how do you distinguish between my rational soul and your rational soul? What's individuating mania?
Yeah. So the thing that distinguishes me from you is going to be something called it's so this part is kind of complicated to explain. I'm going to use like some jargon. You can tell me if it's too much, okay?
Okay.
But there's this idea called like materia signata,
Oh, I'm
okay?
familiar. The matter is parceled into different dimensions, quantities, and spatial temporal configuration.
Yeah, yeah. The point is that, and I know you were there when I had this conversation with Liam. He was sort of given like a type of, I guess you could say, epistemic circularity issue. Even though if it was the case that the epistemic circularity argument was successful, that still wouldn't be a claim about the metaphysical thesis. But anyways, whatever. So point is that, yeah. So we're differentiated by like the facts concerning like our spatial configuration, right? So in other words, the sort of place in space and time that you're at, for example, or
Yeah.
at the time at which you are in a given moment in space and time, that your matter is configured in those very specific ways is what's going to distinguish you from me.
You like K is over here at this specific time in this realm of space time or whatever, and then
And
I'm
he's
also
configured in, this specific way with that specific thing, like those things.
X amount of matter, and yeah, the quantity of matter is going to be different in the spatial. Okay, cool. And then how does the subject persist through time? Like, how do you address like teletransporter cases or the fission case or I think I
Yeah.
don't know what other ones are going to be like objections to these sorts of views.
So for the with the teletransporter thing, um, my answer is pretty simple. I actually think that you you die when you step into the machine before your body's like disintegrated down atom to atom to atom. And then I think there's just what's called a metaphysical duplicate of you that steps out of the teletransporter.
Yeah, I think
for sure.
I share that intuition too. It's no different from somebody like cloning you with your exact memories and then destroying the original body. But
Yeah, like I think I don't think that you're the same person, and the reason why I don't think that is because there's no substantial unity anymore when you break the body down in the teletransporter machine, which is what's required for something to maintain its identity through time or identity through events or something like that. Right? So once that's broken, then the person isn't there anymore. I mean, that's what happens at the time of death is that the substantial unity is broken. That's why we say things are dead.
but you do think that I mean, I know you're Christian, so you do think that the soul persists after death, or no? Do you think it's gone?
I'm inclined to say yes. I don't know if I have any arguments for it though, but I don't know what happens to the soul after it dies. I don't know if it goes into purgatory or if it's reincarnated or if it just, I don't know what happens. I honestly have no clue.
I know the whole point of like par forgiving the fission case. He wants to say that as long like the survival of your memory and psychological continuity is what matters, and that's just like a brute fact about your personal identity. Like it's like irreducible or something like that.
Yeah, I think Parfit wants to say that we shouldn't, he wants to sort of shift the focus, you could say, on personal identity literature. He wants to say that we shouldn't focus on the facts about what personal identity is at all because there just may be no answer, and that we should rather focus on like psychological continuity facts or something. But I don't really like that response. I
Yeah,
think there is a
I think
fact in
that's
there.
gibberish as well. Because I know the amnesia cases they can't account for if I like wiped your memories, um, stuff like that. I don't know. But why would somebody adopt virtue ethics over like egoism? Because I think I find objectivism to be pretty like intuitive. Like, you go ahead.
Yeah, so what I guess you could class me as a type of virtue ethicist, but I'm more specifically a eudaimonic functionalist in the normative sense. Now, what I mean by that is that, and so I could just sort of tell you what I mean, then I'll explain why you should adopt this view. So there's a type of I also take like a certain back there's like a lot of background commitments that we didn't even really get into, but I'll sort of lay some of them out and then I'll tell you how my normative system connects to those things. Okay. So one of the background rules is a theory about phenomenology. Okay, and it's a theory about phenomenology concerning the relevant, you could say, phenomenological properties of certain types of experiential states in such a way where the agent that's having the experience is standing in causal relations to external world facts, right? And those facts that the agent is perceiving, okay, the perceptual properties there, those things, there's a type of causal relation that obtains between the facts about perceptual properties and the facts about the phenomenological properties of the agent. Now, all that to say that I think when we sort of engage in moral discourse, there's a type of moral inquiry that's obtained. Now, I take it that inquiry itself is a sort of epistemic enterprise in such a way where it allows agents to be able to have, you could say, knowledge about certain types of phenomena. Okay. So the point there is that that type of moral inquiry requires certain things. And one of those things is the facts about your virtues, right? Those dispositions that you have. So to be virtuous is to say that you're living life well, right? In other words, those dispositional tendencies that you have are acting in proper accordance with the well-being facts or the goodness properties. And so when I say that I'm a virtue ethicist, that's what I mean by that.
Uh okay, that got like really heavy. I'm not sure I tried. You said something about phenomenology and that um okay, can you kind of like condense what you said? I that I said and track that.
Well, I don't know if so. I don't know if I can condense it, but so basically there's like a lot of moving parts in the background. One is a theory of sense data that I sort of laid out there. Another one is a theory about like perceptual contents. And then the third one is a theory about certain types of moral inquiry. It's called a hermeneutic moral inquiry. Okay. And then the fourth sort of thesis, hmm,
Wait, can you just give me the three so I can like look into them? Hermeneutic inquiry for like epistemology.
it's called hermeneutic moral inquiry.
Hermeneutic moral inquiry.
Right? And the fourth one is obviously the eudaimonic functionalist stuff that I was talking about
Yeah, I
as
get
per
that.
my normative thesis. So the point is that all those things are interconnected to each other. And I just sort of laid out how they are.
And then what were the first two that you talked about? Something about phenomenology and how we stand in causal
Yeah,
relation.
so
Yeah.
I said that I was employing a very specific theory of sense data.
Hmm.
And I think the second thing that I said, if I remember correctly, was that I'm given a very specific theory about phenomenology.
Okay. Well, what's the theory of phenomenology? Was it the thing you just said, the hermeneutic moral inquiry?
No, so well, I don't know if there's a single name for it, but it was just the theory that I laid out, which is that you could sort of say that there's a type of like the phenomenological properties are in causal relation to like external world facts.
Okay. What does that mean? What's phenomenological properties?
Phenomenology is just the study of experiences. So when I say phenomenological properties, I'm talking about the experiential facts about the person.
Okay, and you said that they stand in causal relation to the world.
Yeah. So when
What?
you perceive things like there's facts about those things that cause your perception about them.
Oh, okay. And the facts are existing like stance independently. Like this apple is red, right? Me. That's just that I'm perceiving a fact about the apple, for example, right?
Yeah, like yeah, it's a fact that the apple possesses the property of redness,
Okay. It just
and
all
that
goes.
causes your perceptual activity.
Yeah, it just all goes back to like you don't care about the sort of preferences appraiser has towards a proposition or any attitudes towards like something's existence or whatever. Like the facts that are going to be conducive to its flourishing or its state of existence, whatever they're going to exist, stands independently. Because Apple is red or something, stuff like that. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, but okay, how do you? I think one of the objections to like naturalism, well, one of them's like the open question argument, and then also like I think there's like a triviality objection, which is like how do you derive an ought claim from something that's like a natural fact of the world?
Well, the thing that a lot of people don't know about Hume is that a lot of people kind of assume that Hume like quote proved the naturalistic fallacy, like it was proven, like there was like some formal system for it, or there was like a some like complex. No, that's not what actually happened. So what happened was Hume basically got bored one day, okay, and he decided, let me scope out all the ethics philosophers and let me see what they're doing down the block. And what he noticed is that a lot of them, what they were doing is that they were making this jump, right? They would sort of describe things about the world, and then they would say, therefore, you should do X. And he was like, I don't like that. I think there's not a gap there, or I think that gap there is you're making a leap, right? And so he comes up with this idea about this is odd gap thing, right? Oh, it's not actually the case that you're making a justified inference there, right? You're jumping to a conclusion that the premise doesn't support pretty much. Okay. But the point is that in order for you to say that, okay, you would have already had to assume a theory about the world in the background, right? Which is a type of mechanistic understanding about the world, you could say, or a type of world that's devoid from descriptive facts ever bearing normative properties. But the point is that if you're a moral naturalist, that's something that's already accepted in the background, is that some descriptive properties can in fact be bearers of normative properties, right? So I would need an argument from the person who's employing the is-ought gap why I should adopt that background theory at all in the first place. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, there's like a presupposition that they have like the correct view or whatever. Like, yeah, I see what you're
There's a
saying.
presupposition that descriptive properties and normative properties are entirely separated, which is the very thing that we accept coming into the door,
Have you
right?
guys heard of
So,
the companions and guilt argument?
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, I think that's a really good response to the people that
it's
like
it's
criticize
it's
it.
it's actually a really bad argument.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the fact that you cannot create a separation for why the rejection of uh, moral norms doesn't also entail the rejection of epistemic norms. You don't think that that's like
Mhm.
a strong defeater for someone holding it? Um,
No, you should
Systemic
like
thoughts or
actually
something.
a lot of philosophers like laugh at the companions. It's like kind of a meme in philosophy, the
oh,
companions and guilt argument, because like nobody like just nobody takes it serious. But look, the point is though that yeah. So if somebody were to deploy that sort of thing, I would just I would just first like be I would need to be motivated for why I should adopt that theory in the background in the first place. Does that make sense? Which I really have no reason to do now. I can talk about the type of relation between like moral properties and natural properties. And like I said previously, like I'm not an analytic naturalist, so I don't think it's an analytic reduction between moral properties and natural properties. Rather, I think it's a synthetic reduction. In which case, when I say that certain types of natural facts bear normative properties, what I mean to say there is that the synthetic relation between the moral facts and the natural facts, those things are discovered through a posteriori investigation, not by a priori deduction.
A prior meaning like from reason, right? Like prior to knowledge, and then posterior is just like after you investigate or do like due
Yeah,
diligence.
just the standard notion of the a priori and a posteriori distinction.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Um, what do you think about like relaxed realism?
I'm a relaxed realist, so I think it's a great view.
Wait, is it? Wait. But don't relaxed realists. From my understanding, they're not committed to natural facts about the world. That's the whole point. Like the truth makers, like a deflationary minimalist on truth makers or something. Like okay, in a vacuum, it would still be wrong to torture babies.
I don't think that's, I don't know. Well, what do you mean in a vacuum it would still be wrong? Like you're
Just
saying that if there were no minds there, that it would still be wrong.
yeah,
That,
precisely. Just take an empty world. It'd still be wrong to torture babies.
well, yeah, that's but and then what are you saying after that?
But I may be wrong, but from my understanding, that's relaxed realism. It's not contingent on any sort of natural facts about the world.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, how is it the case that you're asking me pretty much how is it the case that I'm a synthetic reductionist and also a relaxed realist?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the two views can be fused, and here's how I do it. So when I say that the when I say that the moral properties there bear, or excuse me, when I say the moral properties there bear a synthetic reduction relation, there's a distinction between moral properties and like moral propositions. So it's true, right, that the moral properties bear a reduction, or excuse me, rather a synthetic reduction relation to the natural properties. But it's not the case that the truth about the propositions concerning those natural facts turn on the natural facts themselves. Does that make sense?
You said okay. You said it doesn't follow from the propositions existing that they have to turn on the natural facts regarding.
No. So what I'm saying is that the so do you understand the distinction in philosophy between properties and propositions?
Okay, like properties is going to be like the natural facts surrounding the propositions, and then proposition is just going to be, for example, torturing babies for fun is wrong.
Yeah, the point is that propositions are entirely constituted by conceptual content, for example, right? Whereas when you say properties, those things are constituted by maybe like actual things in the world, right? Things that
They exist.
tangible things or something like that,
Yeah.
right? If I say apple has the property of redness, redness is a real property that the apple bears, for example. Right? But if I say it's true that the apple is red, the truth conditions for that proposition don't turn on the like the actual like facts about the thing.
Yeah, they'd be conceptual because you're saying that it's true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah. But I only have a few minutes though, so if you have any more questions, you could fire through them rapidly, and then I have to get ready for work.
I don't know. I think that was all. Man, that was a good talk.
Okay, cool.